Thunderbolts. Would you guys like to read the first issue? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Here. Pass them around. There's one.
Someone over here?
And I'll ask you what you think of it later, and hopefully it's going to be good. Sorry, it's in black and white. I didn't have a color printer here. I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to talk about, so how about, I think I'll just start. Let's just, if you guys have any questions, fire away. Anybody have a question?
What were you drinking last night?
What was I drinking? Jack Daniels and a lot of it. Went to the Nerd Rave thing. It's a good time. I guess it's the Marvel Now panel. I can only speak for myself, but I thought, well, I've worked with Axel Alonso for a long time, so when he got the job as editor in chief, I had I had hope for the future, because I really trust the guy. And Marvel Now, I think, it's like his first really big initiative, and it's exactly the kind of thing that I trust Axel to do, is it's to take a big risk, where there's a natural cycle with a comic book series to where it launches and launches pretty high, and then at some point it levels off, and then but gradually that just keeps going down, and every once in a while it'll jump back up, crossovers, big events, or big storyline. But to line wide, take the whole thing and shake it up. It took creative. I mean, it's a ballsy move, and it's the fact of the matter is, he and most of us know, like, if you're a fan of Deadpool, just because I left the book doesn't mean you're going to stop reading Deadpool. If you're a fan of the X-Men, the Avengers, Captain America, you're going to stick around. I mean, they really, when it comes to comic book fans, I mean, someone has to do something really heinous to get someone to actually drop a book if they're a big fan of the character. So it's one of those moves that it's to bring the people who aren't already fans of a title, who aren't buying a title, and to hopefully bring them in. And in the cases, I've read several of the new issues, and I think, I know that they were very careful in selecting who went to what book, and I think they did a really great job. There's like, I read Remender's first, like, his Captain America, and it's really good, more kind of balls to the wall action than Ed's, which I loved Ed's version, but that was much more an espionage book. What Jerry and Brian are doing with Deadpool now is probably a lot more. The comedy's a lot more prevalent, just because it should be. Those guys, they're funny guys. I'm trying to think of anything else that are. Oh, Bendis' Uncanny X-Men. I thought I'd see that. I mean, it seemed like he was going to be on Avengers forever. Let's see, what else? I guess I'll just talk about Thunderbolts. When I was actually supposed to, I was gonna jump off of Deadpool after like issue 54. I was doing this storyline called Dead, and that was gonna kind of be my swan song, and then I was gonna move on to something else. And Axel, who already had plans to, for Marvel Now, what became Marvel Now, he asked me to hang on for a bit, just so that they could get the transition all worked out. And I think probably, also to line up Brian, bring in Jerry, and do all that stuff. But throughout that, even though I stayed on for another year's worth of stories, obviously it didn't take me a year to write those stories, but we started kicking around ideas like, what was I going to do next? And Marvel, they like what I did with Deadpool. because it made money. So, and they had success with Uncanny X-Force, and so when the idea started to come together that there would be another team book, the concept of Thunderbolt, it being a Thunderbolts team, really wasn't there until of all people, Jeff Loeb just kind of made a statement at a retreat that was just like, well, Ross's last name, his first, his name is Thunderbolt, and so why not just call it the Thunderbolts? And everybody was just like, okay, it's fine. And then, as you'll see, it's actually kind of explained in the second issue. Gave them like not only a uniform where they're all in this kind of red and black getup. There's a reason behind that as well. Simply put, like, why is the skull on Punisher's skull chest red? He's like they're going to be going up against like some really big, powerful, characters, and it was just a way of kind of leveling up Frank's arsenal. Basically, it's this gamma impregnated body armor that he wears. He's not going to be wearing a suit of armor. It's just this thing that he wears, and it's red. With Venom, it was easy because he controls what he wears. So he's just like, well, if everybody else is in uniform, bing, red and black. Elektra, Deadpool, obviously Red Hulk, they were already red. What I wanted to do was, it's probably an oversimplification, but with Uncanny X-Force was a team that came up with the hard solutions, but it was mutant-centric. If you were a threat to the mutant kind, X-Force would track you down and kill you. This is a similar concept, except it is the entirety of the Marvel Universe. And that being said, they don't always, it's not really their mandate to kill so much as it is to, just like in the real world, there are entities within the Marvel Universe that, even though everyone agrees that they're bad and they should probably go, for whatever reasons, agreements, geoscience, and politics, geopolitics, they're allowed to continue operating and doing what they're doing. And Ross, who, he was an old man on the way out, and now that he is this Hulk, and he realizes he's going to stick around, well, and he's no longer in the military, so there's no more red tape, there's no more having to go by the rules. Instead of going by rules, he's going by he's going by his ideals, and going back in the case of the first story arc, and everything that he wished he could have done when he was a general, in the U.S. military, he's doing now with just with the most bizarre, lethal, army currently in the Marvel Universe. It's been really cool writing these group of characters as a team, because they're not traditionally team players, right? So obviously there's a lot of inherent drama right there when you put those characters together in a contained environment. It's pretty volatile. They're just as dangerous to each other as they are to whoever they're going after. So that's gonna give me a chance to kind of indulge, unless honestly, it's always been the soap opera. It's always been like the icing on the cake for, especially with team books like X-Men and Avengers. There's the external, but there's also that internal struggle, among the members. So I was just on the phone with Marvel yesterday about kind of planning down the road and some of the stuff that we have in mind. This is definitely a Take No Prisoners book, but it's even any sort of be it a love triangle or a hate triangle. When the 3 points of that triangle are these characters and the characters that they kind of brush up against, it really allows us to go further. I because of who they are and their characterization, I can go a lot further with it than at no point in time AVX I shouldn't say it, but traditionally even though Wolverine and Cyclops butted heads all the time, it wasn't like Wolverine was just going to turn to Scott and just spike him right through the head. You know, be like, you know, what fucking happened to you. You know, but in Thunderbolts, that could happen at any moment. It happens in the second issue. And it's been a lot of fun, and I'm of a very strong opinion. It really bums me out as a fan and as a creator when publishers make decisions based on fear and taking the safe route, because yeah, it's safe, but it's kind of like gambling in a casino. You know, you can gamble all night long if you're playing roulette and you put $5 on red and $5 on black. All right, yeah, you're gambling, but and a lot of publishers have done that continuously. This is definitely, you know, Marvel's basically just pushing it like all in one place and really taking a gamble. Now, if it completely goes to hell, yeah, they'll find some way to reset it. But while it's going on, I'm definitely going to take advantage of it, you know. And with a book like this, it kind of demands that they can't be tamed stories. They shouldn't be. The other thing that I really enjoy about it is I can watch, you know, CNN or BBC, and a lot of what I'm seeing in the real world informs what's going on in this book. You know, the idea of these political sacred cows that you can't touch, you know, or the fact of not just the U.S. military, but any military regime around the globe has, you know, they've done some pretty shady things, and the Marvel Universe is no exception. You know, people, it's not a huge deal to us in our generation that we overthrew the Sandinista government. You know, we did that. It was a democratically elected government, and we went in there, and Oliver North, and booted them out. You know, those the people that nation voted for. You know, we didn't like them, so we kicked them out and killed a bunch of people. But to a character like Ross, you know, imagine how it is to a general that was there and kind of was of the opinion that, you know, his regret was almost over because he was almost dead. And it's like, in a couple of years, I'm going to be dead anyway. To have that completely taken away from him, be like, he's going to have to live with that shit potentially forever. You know, when does the Hulk die? And that's part of the genesis of the first storyline. It's him kind of going back and tying up some physical and moral loose ends, and in you know, grand serialized fiction tradition, it just spawns a zillion other things going wrong. Obviously, it's not the easiest team to lead, but you know, the whole idea was that it's the team that only Red Hulk could lead. You know, they wouldn't follow anyone else. I'm losing my voice rapidly, so if anyone has a question, let me hear it so I can get some guidance on where to go. Yeah.
Did you have a lot of input? Like, were you the one who picked out the characters? Like,
some were already were picked out for me, and there were other characters where it was really I had to sit there and ask myself, you know, how would these are the assets that are definitely already involved. And I mean, when they were like Elektra, Venom, Punisher, Deadpool, I wasn't going to say no to any of them. It was all right. What don't I have on this team? You know, what kind of I need characters that we're going to serve certain functions within storylines and tactically, because this is a strike force. And that's where there's a character named Mercy who's on the team, and you haven't seen a hell of a lot of her. I think for the most part, I think she was a character that Peter David created in Hulk, and very bizarre character, but ended up being kind of a perfect fit, and with the kind of working out what she would be now, because she's, as you see in the first issue, that she's been locked away for a very long time, and kind of one of those situations where and this is in her last appearance, which was in a Hulk book. She was captured by the U.S. government and taken away. And so you know what happened between then and now, and because her backstory is very bizarre. She seems to be an alien. She seems to have essentially any power that she wants, but all she really wants to do is kill people who she thinks want to die, which is pretty scary. And then when Steve's idea was to, I'm gonna sound like a jerk, but I think it's Great Expectations. It's Mrs. Haversham. Does anyone know the character I'm talking about? Crazy old lady with the moldy,
crazy old lady
with the moldy wedding dress, or the moldy cake and the wedding. Where's the wedding?
Great Expectations, yeah.
Kind of like her, except like weaponized. Like, and Steve's like first passed at her. You know, let's be honest. Steve is a hugely talented illustrator, one of the best storytellers in comics. Doesn't draw the sexiest women.
No.
All right.
I love
can draw an
but-
ass-kicking woman. You know, like the chicks that he draws. Like, yeah, I can buy that she kicks a whole lot of ass. His character design for Mercy was just creepy as shit. So as you know, laying this out, I actually keep her Mercy in back pocket of the story for as long as possible, so that when she shows up, you guys will get the same reaction that I got when I first saw her. You know, and when she shows up, it is definitely it's just pretty. It's a frightful experience, especially with what she does. Other question? Yeah, shoot.
Was there talk around the office, I mean, as far as this whole Marvel Now initiative or anything like that, I mean, was this ever thought it was kind of a direct response to like DC's 52, New 52, or was that kind of, or were you guys talking about this even before DC really kind of started getting, I mean, because here we are a year later and
It's, I can't say for sure that it is or it isn't. I think that on some level, it's a very good possibility that it is, you know. The fact of the matter is, with reshuffling the deck like DC did, it got them a lot of sales. And guys like me, you know, we make art, and Marvel, at the end of the day, you have to realize their job is to make money. They have investors. I mean, anyone who owns a goddamn stock certificate that says Disney on it, you know, you want to get your money. So yeah, I'm sure it has something to do with it. At the same time, though, having known Axel for a very long time, I don't see him doing it again and again and again and again, because you know, I'm not one of those guys that, I'm not like, you know, Marvel rules, DC sucks, but you know, as a fan, I don't like the fact that they keep going back to the well and like everything is new again and everything is new again. It really kind of, and even as a creator, because a lot of this stuff in comics and a lot of our favorite stories have played out over years. You know, stuff that's emerged, and it's also how we. It's hard to kind of advance a character and move them away from their first, you know, their genesis. It's you have to take very measured steps. Joe Quesada, his example was always, you know, Bart Simpson is never going to graduate from the 4th grade or whatever. And we don't care, and we're cool with that, because they keep, even though there has been some you know, the character has had a story arc. We don't have to move him. It's done so while keeping all of the fundamentals in place. That being said, here's a good example. When Tony Stark became a raging alcoholic, you know, that was he had already been that millionaire playboy, kind of fly by the seat of his pants guy. So it really fit, you know, and I think that's why it's such a resonant storyline, because you're like, and anyone who knows anyone, I definitely know, have plenty of experience, who has kind of fallen into drug or alcohol addiction. They're not weak people. A lot of times it's like they're really strong people, you know, but when they go in balls deep, you know, they become a real full-blown addict. And because he was a higher functioning guy, you know, and that's what I'm talking about. It's not just a cosmetic thing, as opposed to if you were to, I don't know, if you like if Tony were to, it would be very strange for him to, or very off-putting for him to like donate all of his money away and then go be a monk and learn kung fu. You know, like that would be weird. You know, like it doesn't. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but that's a Shang-Chi story, or that's it's not an Iron Man story. So the Axel has mentioned again and again that every new the creative shuffle has been a hostile takeover, and I don't know if I approve of that tagline, but because everybody when they found everyone landed on their new we did the musical chairs thing. Everyone was definitely communicating a lot with the previous team, creative team, and it was a seamless transition. But I can't think of any exceptions to that. I don't think anyone was just like well, fuck you. Well, there might have been one, but yeah, to answer your question, I think that probably it had something to do with 52, or whatever they're calling it now.
Still call it New 52.
But and here, all right, I admit to ignorance. What is with the number 52? Can anyone fill this? Can you explain this to me?
I think that's how many new, people are doing characters they're doing 52 characters.
So like
Titles,
52,
52 titles.
Well,
52 weeks in a year.
Yeah,
It existed before the New 52 because there was 52 by Grant Morrison and all.
Yeah,
these
and then
guys.
they counted up and they counted down, and
Basically.
it was like they're so obsessed with this number. It's just I've lost track of what the hell it meant. So I know it was a weekly event, right? And then it was. I know Steve Wacker was involved with it.
I'm gonna go all nerd, and basically what the premise is that there's now, and why they haven't gotten back to him is that basically everything that happened since Crisis on Infinite Earths has been undone. There's now 52 different universes in the multiverse,
It's astounding.
and that's where they came up with that. That's where they came up with it. So
Canon.
I started on 10 books. I'm down to 2.
I never. What's funny about that is, before I was writing comics, I was just reading them, and I used to love those Elseworlds comics. And it wasn't until I was working in the industry that I had my first conversation, because especially early on, you pitch something as an Elseworlds concept. You take the same character and you superimpose it on this. Anyway, you port the whole thing to some other circumstance. What if? I think that's Marvel's version of it. But then you realize, if it doesn't take place, and I think this has always been Marvel's strength, is because the New York, it isn't Gotham, and it isn't what is it? Where does the Flash? It's like Iron City or something like that. Yeah, it's New York, and it's Philadelphia, and it's the real cities, and it's in the outer boroughs, and when they went out to San Fran and we're on the West Coast, that was all real stuff, and it just feels more. It's much more resonant when there's one universe and it's on Earth, and the president in Marvel books is the president who you see on TV. I always dug that. I think even as a kid, I remember my favorite issues is when I grew up in northern Michigan, so really all I knew about the big city of New York was really from comic books and TV. I thought I was as shocked as anyone the first time I went to Manhattan. There are no alleys. I mean, who knew that? I thought there was alleys all over. It's like nothing but
But
alleys.
Spawn lives in an alley.
Yeah, there are
Where's all the
exactly
crime
none. But the ones that really hit home for me and was those stories where the characters would leave New York and they be out in Middle America. It's like I remember where I was reading one of the first comic books I read was the West Coast Avengers, and a Hawkeye and Ant-Man were going after Taskmaster, who I thought was just the coolest character ever. And he had set up this. It was like the carnival of crime, and it was out in the ass end of Montana. And I was like, wow, if they could come to Montana, you know, they could come to West Branch, Michigan. And that's why I with Deadpool, like he would be bouncing around the country because I didn't see any reason why he had to stay, or I don't even think he'd want to kind of, you know, severe ADHD kind of guy. I don't think he would be good at staying in the same city, keep looking at the same shit, you know. So it kind of established that it had been established before, like that he had a house in San Francisco well before the X-Men went there. So I used that. That's where he put Blind Al in the box. Brought that back. And like when they went to Vegas and stuff, I just thought I like to road trip a lot, and in Thunderbolts, that's going to be a very globe-hopping book. I really enjoyed doing that with Dark Wolverine. You know, where he would be in Madripoor, he'd be in Tel Aviv, or he'd be, you know, all over the globe. I always thought that was cool. Plus, I like those kinds of movies. And when you have an unlimited, you know, special effects budget or, you know, scene budget, which we do in comics, you know, it's cool to see something other than like the city skylines, just gotta be boxes. Boring. Let's try something else. But that being said, and Zeb Wells did an incredible Spider-Man story. When Spider-Man goes to the outer boroughs, like, what the fuck's he gonna swing from? And he like walks outside and then he walks back in. And he's like, "Can you call me a cab?" Yeah. Go back to the city. You know, what the fuck am I gonna swim?
Now you wish you could fly.
Power line? You know? So it's like 20 feet. Can't even really get going. Any other questions? Yeah.
Wasn't it hard not to play favorites with characters when you were writing this one?
No, actually, this is the first time this is my first swing at writing an ongoing team book. I've written, you know, teams doing like guest appearances, or I've had them appear in other books. This is my first time doing a team book, and it's definitely, mechanically, it's a lot different than writing a solo book. But it also opens up a lot of possibilities because, you know, in a solo book, for the most part, you're on the main character the entirety of the book. And if you move away from the character, you have to do so very quickly. Or if you move away from the character, you're usually moving to the villain, you know. For a number of reasons. There's limited space in comics. You know, you can't be wasting time setting up a bunch of shit. It's hard to convince an artist to, like, you know, I need this page and it's just nothing but like traffic and people, and yeah, like that page is gonna sell never, you know, the original. So, you know, you want to keep these marquee characters on the page. But when you have a team, you can, and if you think about it, like all your favorite Avengers, X-Men, they split up immediately. Like, so that way you can move, and you can tackle a problem from several angles. You know, it's like Emma Frost and Cyclops are over here, and Jubilee and Wolverine are over here. You know, and you get to really tell it gives you a lot more scope. The hard thing for me to do is to realize that when you're doing a team book, especially when you're launching one, is that there are some people who are going to pick up Thunderbolts simply because they're a Red Hulk fan, simply because they're a Deadpool fan or they're a Punisher fan, you know. And so every character is someone's favorite character. So you have to make sure, I have to make sure that everyone gets their moment throughout every issue. And if you skip one, then you better make up for it in the next issue. And but in learning how to do that, you know, it's actually become a lot of fun, you know, because at first it seems kind of daunting. You're like, man, like I've got all these leads and they all have to, you know, have to come up with something specific for all of them. When you start getting used to it, you realize that it's not that hard, especially if you like the characters, which is I don't know how many aspiring writers are out there, comic book writers, but you know, if you get the chance to start pitching ideas, don't pitch for books that you don't like, you know, because the worst thing that could happen is that you get the job, you know, and then you're writing, I fucking hate this guy, you know, and it's gonna come across in the page, and you're gonna have problems. Yeah, there are every once in a while I've been approached to do a project, and it's just like, well, sure, I'd like to have the money, but just I'm not. Early on, I was asked about writing some Spider-Man stories, and at the time I was like, frankly, I just don't get it. I don't get Spider-Man. He's just kind of a wimp, and I don't. And now I've actually started to really, really like the character. Of course, now Dan Slott's got it locked down. You notice he's the one guy who didn't get shuffled around. They're like, now Dan's hitting it out of the park. It's just, I think, maybe, I don't know, I guess I just needed time to look at, what the character was all about. And frankly, I think the movies helped a little bit, just kind of reminded me, because when I was a little kid, I really liked Spider-Man, but then I never picked up the habit, like in the 90s, I wasn't reading any Spider-Man books. Kind of lame. Kind of just like this milquetoast mama's boy. It was much more Batman thing. But nowadays I really like Spider-Man, and I just keep thinking about Batman, and like he's just this pouting little baby. When you think of it, and yeah, you're just like, he needs to fucking grow up. Oh no, I'm gonna dress up like a bat.
My parents are dead.
Yeah.
My parents are dead.
There's a lot of people with dead parents, man. They don't dress up like bats. Lose their goddamn minds, And how does that even happen? I want to dress up as a bat. It's like, he's got deep, deep problems. Any other questions? Yeah.
As far as on the same topic of writing multiple lead characters in the same storyline, you ever find it very difficult that when you've got so many different prominent personalities to keep them all separate in the mind, and in the sense that when you have to write them, you're like, all right, I have to sort of see where he would be in his own head.
Yeah.
Do they ever mesh?
That's it's like that with any character that you're writing. It's something that you have to. It just comes with you develop it. The more it's something you have to practice. Is that and how the best. If you're writing Punisher, when Punisher speaks, you don't want your voice coming out of his mouth. He shouldn't be talking and acting like you. You need to write it from the Punisher's standpoint, and that's why a lot of times when I'm working on a character, and I did this, if he stuck to the wall in front of my computer, it's all the main characters' names and like little notes, like just one word notes about to remind me who they are and what general purpose they all serve and how they all fit together to form this this tapestry. Used Axel's favorite word. There are times, yes, when I'll write something, I'm like that. And I'll usually know, I've done it enough times at this point to know, if something's not right. And sometimes it's that. I'll look at it and try to figure it out, why isn't this working? Then I'll realize it's because I got the characterizations off. That's why it doesn't feel right. It doesn't read right. And it's just, and once you identify it, it's usually pretty easy to fix. I had to, when I wrote out the first issue of Thunderbolts, the original script was 48 pages. Obviously that's way too big. And it was just simply, I was finding how, my take on the characters through writing it. And since I was having such a good time, I just kept writing it, because it's always, you never want to be you never want to stop writing because you're writing too much. Sometimes you have to write your way to the end of a problem, and once you get it all out there, then you kind of take a breather and then go back and look at it and figure out, all right, this is baby and this is bathwater. And this is definitely a Red Hulk moment, and T-Bolt Ross is coming through here, and that's all nice and balanced out. And, Deadpool, that's good and chaotic, but yet there's some sort of evil plan, in place there. And Punisher was a tough one because, and I think Garth Ennis was the guy who really nailed this. He didn't stray far from it at all. Is that Frank Castle's just this black hole. There's just almost nothing there, and it's very simple. He kills. he just wants to kill mobsters. That's all he does. Like, he wakes up and he kills mobsters. He doesn't go to the grocery store. He doesn't worry about, he doesn't worry about where he's going to sleep that night. He's only concerned with killing as many of them as he can before he has to get some sleep so that he can be rested to kill some more mobsters. Yeah, and a lot of most of my favorite Punisher stories, and the trick that I found works is you actually write around Punisher. You don't really spend a lot of time in his head because it's a very singular note with him, and we've got something planned that Punisher fans I think are going to kind of lose it over, but and it's really a further exploration of that. Does this guy have any human emotion at all? Like, what's left? It's like the tagline on the Chainsaw Massacre movie: "Who will survive and what will be left of him?" That's really, that's in a broader sense, that's the purpose that Frank serves on that team. He's the canary in the coal mine. Even though he's the one character on the team with no superpowers, he's the least human. So if it's too far for Punisher, it's too far. You've really shuffled up the coil at that point.
It's like an X-Men when they kill the kid, Deadpool's not happy.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember when we that was a storyline that was born in a writers conference, and Rick Remender is an idea machine. He just will not stop. Sometimes it can be kind of exhausting because it's just like, well, what if we did this, and then we'll do this, and that's like, Rick, you've thrown like you want to put like 6 huge storylines in this one arc. It's like, pace yourself. He's like, yeah, but I got like 60 more. Fucking calm down, buddy.
Yeah, it's called the Dark Ages.
when it we were kind of putting and we'll do this a lot. Like you throw in you've got an idea for a story, you want to bounce it around with other writers, really just, or editors, and that was the moment where X-Force, that was the glue that kept them together. Their complicity, the fact they were all involved in the murder of that kid. Rick was smart enough not to really put a lampshade on it, and really call attention to it. But if you look back, like, that was the moment when everyone just became locked, and they were really stuck together. And it was a crucible moment. And we have a moment like that in Thunderbolts. It's alluded to for quite a while, and then when you finally see what it is, everybody will kind of shit. But I won't talk about that. So, those of you who've read the book, you got any questions? No questions? Who read it? Raise your hand. Give me your honest opinion. What do you think?
I like it.
It's like the getting the band together kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's I guess honest feedback. I mean, with any issue, one, it's a setup issue. I mean, you got to establish, what's happening, and I like. I'm a big fan of Steve's art. I have been.
Yeah, me too.
Since Preacher, and so that was really a help, and I kind of thought, we get a little, like, it was like a snapshot of each character, and the fact that they're not real likable people, even outside of Deadpool, which just because of the way everybody kind of it's Deadpool. But I like the idea, and I didn't realize it actually until you brought it up, the whole Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross,
Mm-hmm.
Thunderbolts, that, what I'm saying, that connection.
Yeah, isn't it like, it's one of those things where
How's he never been on the Thunderbolts
yeah, it's
before?
why does this never happen?
But, and I think that, it's definitely it makes me want to pick up issue number 2. And I
Good.
think that's always kind of the best thing about a number 1 is if you get done with number 1,
It's
you
really
want to buy number 2.
Get the hook in. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I was also, right from the get-go, we knew that the issues 1 and 2, they'll be out within, I think, a week of each other. And knowing that, I was able to, issue 2 is more of a traditional first issue, where it's media the best example is always a James Bond movie. When every James Bond movie starts, you're at the resolution of some other mission. You don't know why he's doing this shit, but it's just balls to the wall right off the bat, you know. And then he's done, and then you introduce the next one. That is the second issue. So it'll be this is kind of like the decoder ring for that issue, because it would have been a huge mistake to do that issue, which you have to know why these characters are coming together. You don't even have to know what they're after, what the target is. But you have to, these characters who just they're not team players. Why would they join a team? It was an issue that needed to be done. To do it as a second issue would have been box office poison, because you can't have like this huge explodomatic first issue and then do an issue like that. You'd be like, it have a massive cooling effect on the whole thing. So just a bit of planning and knowing that it's like we have an extended first issue. So if you basically what I'm saying is if you dug that, then you'll love the second issue. And Steve really goes for the fence on the second one too. It's I've been impressed. You forget that this was the guy who did all that crazy shit at like 2000 AD in Warrior, you know. Forget like this is how he started out. Hell, he worked for Marvel UK doing superhero stuff, you know. And obviously Preacher, you know, got some pretty cool visuals in there.
Yeah.
Father Darny.
Oh,
I think it was basically when our space was introduced. I'm just like, are you kidding me?
That, you know, and what's funny is, I mean, obviously, you know, Preacher is like a seminal work, you know, but have you noticed that Garth is he's got like they're Garth Ennis archetypes that tend to show up in all of his stories. Like nowadays, you almost always have that character with the physical deformity, you know, and you usually have some sort of John Wayne-esque character, and then you'll have a religious character.
For someone from Ireland who loves John Wayne.
Well, that's the thing, and it's like, you know, they say it's often said, and I think it's very true, is that no one loves America like an immigrant, you know, and yeah, fucking Garth loves America. I mean, he'll tell you, he's like, I'm never going back to Ireland. You know, when he came over here, it was to stay. Like, he didn't leave anything back there. He's like, I'm never going back. When he got married, they went. It was on this island off the coast of Ireland, so that was like as close as he wanted to get. You know? But he loves you know, especially the westerns, you know, and I like westerns too. But again, it's hard for us to read that stuff or to experience like someone who isn't from this country. And it's funny, and that's gonna be like the Garth Ennis panel, but for someone who's known for writing such brutal stories, he's probably the most romantic writer, you know, one of the most in comics, because like his love stories are always just bleeding hard on the table, you know, like just and that's the Irish in it.
It's like you read the end of Preacher, and like the end is like this great romance. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I actually enjoyed that. I still haven't gone back and reread it because because I can still tell you what happened in what issue. You know, I'm waiting for that when it starts to kind of fade a bit, so that when I reread it, I'll get that punch that I got the first time I read it.
Huge omnibus you one sitting.
Yeah. I got about 15 minutes. Anybody? Yeah.
You're talking about different skill sets needed for different parts of the team. Any room for the world's greatest assassin, Hitmonkey?
My girlfriend Kimmy and I were actually talking about this. Well, in Deadpool, in my final story arc, you know, Hitmonkey has really kind of a big revelation, you know, and it's one that it's similar to what Deadpool, you know, when Deadpool stops obsessing on his on death, who he sees as his one true love, you know, the girl that got away. And because Kimmy's a fan of Hitmonkey, and I mean, obviously I am too, but she's like, well, how can, you know, he ripped his suit off and he just took off running, and I was like, yeah, you leave that door open, you know, there's nothing saying you can't put the suit back on. And yeah, it would have to be, you know, it would have to be very carefully planned how to bring Hitmonkey in, but you know, maybe we'll do like we'll do like a Christmas special or something.
They just did that issue with Duke and Wolverine and the X-Men. It was just all about Duke.
That was, and I definitely got spoiled with Deadpool, which is a book where I could literally do anything I wanted, anything at all. Did a fucking musical, you know. And it was never a. I mean, if it weren't for, you know, I wouldn't have been able to do Hitmonkey without Deadpool. So Thunderbolts is definitely a much more serious book, but at the same time it has Deadpool in it, so I get to do a little bit of that stuff, but it's in the mix with everybody else, you know? And what's also cool is that since I'm not with, you know, I'm not writing stories that focus solely on Deadpool, I actually get to almost write him from a different angle, you know, because he's got to interact with these other equally important characters. So you get a sense of what it's like to actually have to work with someone that is just completely volatile, who's just as apt to hold the grenade and throw the pin. You know, he's how does teamwork play into that?
He's completely.
Yeah. Anybody else? Are we done? All right. Where's my comics? I gotta have them back, or my ass will be in a sling.
What author's coming out?
December. I think it's December. Wait, you know what?
Somebody back there took a picture of the paper.
Oh, speaking of taking a picture, what if the AR thing? Are you guys? I'm genuinely curious. Do you guys take advantage of the AR stuff that Marvel's doing? This stuff?
I've done it a couple of times.
Yeah. I think it's great. I think that they're kind of finding out how to apply it. I think in theory, you know, as someone who enjoys, you know, watching like behind the scenes stuff on DVDs, you know, because, but also like from the get-go, and I know that they want to concentrate more on doing stuff for covers because, you know, we all walk into the comic store and there's all these covers, and nowadays a lot of them are very, very similar. It's always like this iconic shot of a main character. It doesn't really story covers. I know Axel's actually a fan of them, so they're going to be coming back a bit. But for the longest time, it didn't matter what was on the inside of the book. It was always like Spider-Man swinging, you know. So to be able to hold your phone up to it and get like a commercial for it, you know, or something that shows you like. Even if it's as nail on the head as, because I've done video where I'm sitting in front of a camera and in front of a green screen, I'm talking about the issue, you know, trying to kind of pitch it to you. Or Axel has the one where he walks across the page, you know. I think that I'd love to see them continue to do that and kind of use more of it. Because comics compete with other forms of entertainment, and it's expensive, you know, especially now when you've got, for the most part, people are looking for a reason to drop a book. You know, books like $4. It's like it's a gallon of gas. I can get you back to work, you know, to working back once, twice, you know, and that's something you have to have. You know, anything I think that we can, anything that we can put out there that's like an added value. Because I know that with Thunderbolts, on some of the interior pages, you can actually watch. You'll probably dig this. You watch the pencils to inks to the rendering in the color. You know, it does like the workflow of that particular page, like how it started. Well, I guess it wouldn't have pencils. Believe it or not, Steve doesn't pencil anything. He goes, it's inked right away. Confident guy. No, I've never even seen him use an eraser, frankly. That's why if you he doesn't do a lot of conventions, but when you see him doing the sketches, they basically look like his interiors. You know, he doesn't have like a fast Jesse Custer. He just does Jesse. All right, so yeah, we're done. All right, thanks a lot, guys.